And let's turn our focus now to the West Bank, where the Palestinian leadership there is facing its most difficult period in recent memory. The relationship with Washington is at rock bottom after Ramallah cut ties over Trump's Jerusalem declaration. Powerful Gulf states like Saudi Arabia seem to have strong ties to the U.S. president.
Right. All of that is outside, but at home, President Mahmoud Abbas has faced sporadic protests and a continuing rift with Hamas in Gaza. Along with our senior Middle East correspondent, Mohammad Al-Kassim, joining us now from our studios in Tel Aviv. I spent the morning in the Palestinian Authority headquarters in Ramallah talking about all of that with Dr. Nabil Shaath. He's Mahmoud Abbas's senior foreign policy advisor. We'll go through some of the highlights from what he told us today. First is peace process in a new era. Watch.
Today, the world is changing. Russia is becoming an important potential partner to a peace process here. China, Britain, France, Germany. I mean, and we feel that with a multipolar world moving away from a unipolar world owned by the United States, it's about time that Russia, China, Europe, with the United States, play an important role in a multi-party negotiating arena.
Mohammed, we've heard from Mideast expert, one after the other on the show, saying that the U.S. is still the indispensable partner or mediator, but the Palestinian leadership seems to think they could broaden it out.
Well, the Palestinian leadership is saying that it will not be the U.S. by itself anymore. One of the things that Dr. Nabil Shaath talked about today, that in the past the U.S. was a broker, a dishonest broker, but it was acceptable. Now it's no longer a dishonest broker that is acceptable by the Palestinians because it's partnering with the Israeli government. It has adopted the Israeli narrative. And that's why they believe that bringing in Russia, bringing in China, the European countries, as well as the United Nations, in addition to the maybe Japanese and others, would be helpful. They're not completely saying no to America, but it's not by itself.
Definitely not by itself. And he had very strong words for President Donald Trump, in general, saying that it's not just this maybe current attempt at peace, but really that Trump and his administration has left a sort of scorched earth behind them in those attempts. And we all hear that word. We say deal of the century, the ultimate deal. All those words have been thrown around from the White House. Here is Nabil Shaath on that.
The attempt by Mr. Trump to impose on us what he calls the deal of the century. That is no deal. It is not really a compromise. It is not the result of any serious exploration of where we were and how we need to move forward. It's simply a giveaway. I mean, the Trump approach of moving the American embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing united Jerusalem as the capital of the State of Israel, stopping his financing of support for the refugees, stopping from criticizing the Israeli colonial settlement project, which at least was criticized by the State Department, which is not, stopping even the use of the word occupied when you talk about the West Bank and Gaza. All of these giveaways that really characterize what is called the Trump approach or the Trump deal of the century is destroyed what there was of the peace process.
Mohammed, of course, the Trump administration claims it still wants to go ahead to try to make progress to that deal. They have their peace plan, but it really sounds like that door is now being shut by the Palestinian Authority.
That's correct, Kalev, and it's not a secret how angry, how visibly frustrated Dr. Shaath is just by listening to him. And we spent some time with him today in his office, and he was steadfast in his position, just like his boss, President Mahmoud Abbas, that they will not reconnect with the Americans as long as the U.S. administration does not change its position on Jerusalem, on the two-state solution. And even Dr. Shaath said, and Nurit could collaborate with this. He said that the Americans are not even extending their hands and trying to connect with the Palestinians on the issues that really concerns the Palestinians.
Right, and when we asked him a little bit after that, when we asked him if Jared Kushner, potentially, if Jason Greenblatt were to come back to Ramallah and say, here's our peace plan, do you want to talk? Let's talk about it. He said, we're not interested in listening. They could tell us about it on Facebook or online, that there are many ways to do it. Let's talk about another key part of any potential peace, though, and that's Saudi Arabia. Arabia. I asked him about the Gulf states when there's some concern that maybe states like Saudi Arabia have gotten closer to Trump and might be abandoning Palestinian interests in favor of their own. Here's what Dr. Nabil Shaath had to say on that.
Never will I expect an Arab leader to tell his people, I am, quote unquote, selling out Palestine. What really practically destroyed Mr. Trump's attempt is his miscalculation about the role of the Arab world, particularly the Gulf leaders in Egypt. That miscalculation has become very clear with the last visit of Mr. Kushner and Mr. Greenblatt, and their last visit was clearly a fiasco.
Mohammed, here I wonder if Nabil Shaath is not being a little diplomatic. He does still have to be a little careful what he says about countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt that still play a huge role in the region and with the Palestinians.
That's correct, but Kalev, let's be honest here. If the Palestinians do not support any plan coming from the U.S. administration, from Washington, even if the Saudis, the Egyptians, and others support it, it will be dead on arrival. And the Saudis know that. One of the Palestinian officials that we've spoken to also today said that there is intention to by some Arab leaders to agree to whatever the U.S. is about to offer. But the problem is that it will be also political suicide for them, because they will lose their position as the leader of the Islamic world, or even among their population. It's not going to be easy. And I take you back a few years ago when President Arafat came back from Washington after meeting with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and former President Clinton about Jerusalem and about the plan. And he went to former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, who said, I am not touching Jerusalem. This is not going to come on my watch. Jerusalem is a very sensitive issue, and no Arab leader wants to be involved in giving, as Mr. Shaath said, giving it away.
Well, let's touch on one more very sensitive issue, volatile one right now, the dispute between Fatah and Hamas. No reconciliation talks have managed to end it. I asked Dr. Nabil Shaath about the Palestinian policy of cutting salaries of officials in Gaza. That's something that's drawn a lot of outrage in the West Bank and in Gaza. Here's his answer to that.
That is going to end, and my firm belief is that sooner or later, and I hope sooner, we will end that separation and we will go back to a democratically elected unity government. We are not talking about these measures now. We hope that we will never get to any new measures. We are talking about how to make that final effort by the Egyptians work. And we are doing our best to make it work. And therefore, when you do so, you don't think of alternatives.
And Mohammed, more news on that just in the hour since we left that interview this morning.
That's correct, Nurit. We've spoken to a PLO official as well as a Fatah official who both said that there are serious efforts by the Egyptian intelligence officials and the Egyptian government regarding the reconciliation talks. And maybe within the next few days, we will see some serious steps taken to bridging the gap between Fatah and Hamas. And a delegation from Hamas was in Cairo today. It came back to Gaza. And it looks like, according to what we're hearing from Ramallah, that maybe we are seeing some serious efforts by the Egyptians to end the divide between the Palestinian factions.